What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, welcome to my channel and welcome back to another True Crime Sunday. Now today we're going to be talking about a true crime incident that happened like right here, like literally, like not just in Brisbane, Australia, which is where I'm from, but right here, as in like one street away is where, oh my god, I shouldn't be pointing where it is. Okay, please don't stalk me for me telling you guys where I live, okay? Because I mean, this bushland that I'm going to be talking about is quite big, so really I could be anywhere. Just don't stalk me. I'm not that fun, I promise you. The Seven Hills Bushland Reserve. So the police have called this particular crime the perfect crime, Brisbane's perfect crime. I first found out about this case right after I had finished the research for last week's True Crime Sunday, which is currently uploading right now. And I was in the gym and I saw a group of guys just stop what they were doing and look up at the television. There's like a couple of different TV screens in the gym. They don't emit any sort of sound or anything like that, but you can see kind of what's happening with like the, what are they called? Like the headlines and things like that. So I, naturally curious, always looking at boys, looked at the boys, saw them looking at something, and then I looked up at the television and I saw the sign that I see every morning when I go for my morning hike in the Seven Hills Bushland Reserve. Jesus, I always feel like this creepy feeling in there, and I mean, it probably is just because I am a little scaredy cat, but just knowing all of this is just making me like I'm never going to walk in that bushland ever again, because I, generally speaking, hike in that bushland every single morning. You guys know I come up on Instagram, I'm like, morning guys, I'm going for my morning hike. That is where I go, the Seven Hills Bushland Reserve, and this is where it is. I need to stop doing this with my hands. I'm just like so shook. You know what I'm saying? Okay, let's get into let's get into today's case. Oh my god. Wendy Darvill was a mother of two, and she was the author of such books like What Shall We Tell the Children and the Puberty Book. So she was this outspoken author, and she's written more books. Those are just the two that I've listed there, but basically all of her books are written on sexual education for young people. And then the What Shall We Tell the Children is a book aimed at teachers and parents on how to talk to their children about sexual education. Now, keep in mind the time of her disappearance is a time in Australia, and okay, let's be honest, 2019 in Australia is still one of the most conservative, developed countries on the planet. We pride ourselves on being like this laid back stereotype, when realistically Australians are some of the most uptight people like in the whole entire world. So at the time, she wasn't just an author of these books that were getting people mad, but she was also a spokesperson, and she was very outspoken, and there was a little bit of backlash. She was also a family planning Queensland education officer. She's been on television before, and she is known for being outspoken in terms of things like the morning after pill and sexual education, obviously, but mostly unwanted pregnancies and contraception for teenagers who are finding themselves in this situation of like, I just got pregnant, I'm 16. You know what I'm saying? The Australian Family Association specifically told Wendy to butt out and accused her of supporting not contraception, but abortion. Remember, this is Australia we're talking about. The Australian public and also a lot of Australian politicians are super conservative, and so being outspoken on things like contraception, the morning after pill, unwanted pregnancies is just, she was a brave woman to be talking about that in 1996. Wendy was only 35 when she went missing, and the day before she went missing, she would open a letter from the Australian Tax Office, and we presume that this is the catalyst to whatever happened to her. The letter said that the Darvill family owed them 6 figures in debt because they had concealed the state of their finances and they hadn't paid their taxes for not her business, but her husband, Gary Darvill's computer consulting business. And she had no idea. She was freaking out. She called their financial advisor, and their financial advisor was like, sis, there's not really any getting out of this. And this is when she realized that her husband had betrayed her. He had lied to her. And they had to pay $120,000 to the Australian tax office. It was the next day at 11 a.m. that Wendy had set off to go to the ATO to pay the first installment of $600. But she would never make it to the Australian tax office. She had disappeared without a trace, or so it seemed. It was more than 2 weeks later that police had actually found her Toyota Camry, which was parked adjacent to a city bus stop, which is a park and ride area, which is basically where you park and ride public transport. But interestingly enough, the person who is standing next to this car is Gary Darvill, and police were like, what are you doing here? And police said that the car looked like it was just covered in dust. It looked like it hadn't been used in a really long time, like no one had driven it. It had been there. And it just so happened that they had pulled up to the car at the time that Gary was about to get in the car. Now keep in mind that 1996 is a different time. Legislation has changed a lot since then, but at the time legislation said that because she was just a missing person, they couldn't stop him from taking the car, and he drove off with the car. But this set them on his sides. Oh, this set them on his sides. They were like, he is suspicious, fam. Oh, I just did a little bit of Bailey Sarian there. Shout out, sis. But anyway, they were like, he's suspicious. He's just driven off with like probably the last place that she was ever in. It has a lot of evidence in there. Let's call him in for an interview. So 2 days later, they got him in for an interview, and guess who had just cleaned this car inside and out? Old mate Gary Darvill. So Gary comes into the police station 2 days later. He's having his interrogation, and he straight up denies any claims of wrongdoing in Wendy's disappearance. And the police are like, interesting. And what's even more interesting, which I don't know, like, it's kind of like, I would do this if anyone suspected me of anything shady. I would straight up 100% of the time refuse to do a polygraph test. There's no mention of a polygraph test in any of the research that I did, but he did lawyer up straight away, and I would lawyer up straight away. Obviously, like, I don't have the finances to have a lawyer like O'Gorman, like the guy that he hired, whose name is O'Gorman. I would have a public defender, but I would lawyer up straight away the second I felt that the police are suspecting me for something crazy or shady or just not all good there, sis. Okay, so just, if anything ever happens in my life and someone's like, ellyV lawyered up straight away and refused a polygraph test, just know that I would do that because polygraphs are just, they're not 100%. Okay, and then like if they're wanting you to take a polygraph, it's more than likely that they think you're a suspect, and I'm gonna need some sort of like, I need help because I don't know anything about the law. So he lawyered up straight away, which is like, I'm like, he's suspicious, but I would do the same thing. So Gary's lawyer, O'Gorman, he says that Gary actually asked the police to get the car cleaned. That's what he's claiming. That's what he told the media. Also, he's saying that the police, or at least the detectives in the interrogation, detained him too long without a lawyer. I don't know, like I've watched CSI. Is that the one? Where it's like if you ask for a lawyer, then you have to have a lawyer. But from my research, it looks like there's a certain period of time that you can interrogate someone without offering them a lawyer. So that's what he's claiming to the media. He's claiming that the detectives, this is wrongdoing. Objection, sir, ma'am. So the media now is looking to the family for comments and things like that. And in spite of all of this just crazy circumstances, Val French, which is Wendy's mum, comes out and she's like, no, he wouldn't do this. She came out in full support of Gary, in spite of everything. And so did Barry French. He was like, no, look, Barry's actually the one who got Gary the lawyer in the first place, because apparently Barry was on the phone to Gary. Oh, it sounds bad. Like, it just, these Australian names, I'm telling you. But, okay, so Barry, Wendy's father, got Gary, Wendy's husband, and the suspect, the lawyer, because apparently when he was on the phone to his son-in-law, the son-in-law sounded emotionally exhausted and like he didn't even have the chance to leave if he wanted to. And so that's when a lawyer was called in by Wendy's father, Barry. This is when Val, who, by the way, is divorced from Barry, then comes out and says if she could find a man like Gary, then she would get married again. I think that's a weird thing to say, but anyway, she says a whole bunch of other stuff. I just thought that one line was just like, she said that it was a matter of envy that two people could be so happy together. She said that he was just the perfect husband, the perfect son-in-law, and the perfect father. And she said that it was incomprehensible and impossible for Gary to be a person of interest in the case. She then described the night that Gary reported Wendy as a missing person, and she said that he was frantic. She said nobody got sleep. And so this is her coming out in support of her son-in-law, saying absolutely not. And also, if I could find a man like him, I would then get married again. That seems like a little dig at her ex-husband, but I mean, like, it's just weird. But, you know, people say weird things when they're in grief. Now, Val did say that it likely has more to do with a stalker or someone who was angry that Wendy was so outspoken about, like, sexual education and unwanted pregnancies in teenagers than it did with Gary. She said that the office that Wendy worked at was getting all these anonymous calls the weeks prior to her disappearance. And so she said it has more to do with her daughter's outspoken nature than it does with her husband's six-figure debt that Wendy had just found out about the night before she went missing. It was 3 years that would go by and nothing came of anything. And the police then put out a statement saying that they don't have any evidence, but they do believe that Wendy Darvill is no longer living and that she had met her demise. They said that there was a $50,000 reward for anyone with information on her whereabouts or where her body was. 7 years would go by, and it would be then that a routine police patrol would be happening near the Seven Hills Bushland Reserve. This is 3 days after what would have been their 7-year anniversary. Police found Gary Darvill stumbling out of the Seven Hills Bushland Reserve covered in dirt. Apparently he was confused, he was disheveled. They took him and they did a background check, and then they saw that there was a connection to a case 7 years prior to Wendy Darvill. Now, because he was covered in dirt, people, I mean, obviously the first thing that I think of is like he got rid of some really old remains, or he went to visit the remains because their anniversary was coming up, and obviously he's covered in dirt, and that's just the first thing that comes up in my mind. So obviously that was the first thing that came up in police's mind. In the investigator's mind, it's a cold case, but they were like, this is weird, he's covered in dirt, let's just get a team together and let's get a K9 unit and let's go into the bushland and have a little search. And that's what they did. Now, the team was specifically searching for any sort of grave site, and they did find some unidentified remains, and they sent the bone fragments to the John Tonks Center of Forensic Examination. When the results came back, though, it was found that it came from a non-human source. So after this search, the cold case is now heating up, and Gary is now renamed the focal point of the search in a conference. So he was the prime suspect before, and he is now renamed the prime suspect now. O'Gorman comes out to the media again and says that Gary has a neurological condition and the Bushland incident is a relapse, and they put him back in hospital and it was just a relapse. I don't know what the neurological condition was. It's not specific. I can't find anything out there. If you know what that is, or you know what happened to make him like that, then let me know in the comments below. But there was nothing specific. He just said Gary has a neurological condition, and that's what the Bushland incident was. Val then came out in support of Gary again and said that the Bushland incident was just that he went into the bushland and he fell and he must have laid there for hours, and she felt sorry for him. She said that Gary had never been the same since Wendy's disappearance, and she said that the dirt all over him was just because he fell. Barry then came out and said that, hey, I don't believe for a second that my daughter would have committed suicide, and I honestly don't think that she would have tried to have gone missing, or that she could have stayed missing for 7 years. He said, I don't think any of those are a possibility. I just want to know what happened. I just need to know what happened. I know that because he says, I know she's no longer living, but I just want to know. And this reminds me of last week's True Crime Sunday, where Linda Johnson just wanted to know what happened to Jessica. And she said that, look, police aren't looking at this. Even if it doesn't come to an arrest, I just want to know what happened to my daughter. I just need to know. I need these pieces to fit together. And so it's kind of like a parent's plea for things to make sense, you know what I mean? Because the Bushland incident had reopened the case, the stress, I assume, led Gary to just completely snap. So 3 weeks later, Gary committed suicide. He was only 44 years old. And then in the Seven Hills Bushland Reserve, they would find an abandoned bag that had a book of poetry and a handwritten note that said, I'm sorry for what I've done. They would later confirm that this handwritten note in the abandoned bag was from Gary Darvill. I'm assuming that was from like a DNA test or like a handwriting thing, but it was confirmed that this was from Gary. And it makes sense because he committed suicide and then this bag was found. I'm sorry for what I've done. What does that mean? So Gary Darvill committed suicide and the abandoned bag was found right there. But that was in 2008. So it's 2019 right now. So what has made this thing pop up on the news? What has made this thing pop up to where I'm like, I must research it? And why am I telling you this story right now? Well, police have just released the original footage of his interrogation. So the police released the original footage and Gary looks like he's calm. He's wearing like this nice blue dressy shirt, and he doesn't seem like he's in this big like need for help like his father-in-law said. It doesn't, I don't know, I just saw like a small clip of it, but he was drinking water, like he had access to water. They were having not a nice conversation, they were having a calm conversation. I can't say that talking about your possibly deceased wife is a nice conversation, but he seemed like he was doing pretty fine. And they were talking about that morning, the events of that morning. Gary was like, look, she was upset. It was easier to lie to her than to tell her the truth. But she agreed that we could sell the house if we needed to. I gave her a kiss on the cheek and then I went for my morning walk. So the police have said that now there is a $250,000 reward for anyone who has any information on where Wendy's body is or what happened. And they actually say that there is indemnity for anyone who maybe assisted in the murder or anyone who has any information, because their prime suspect is dead because he committed suicide. So there's indemnity. There won't be any murder charges to anyone who gives them information on what had happened. So let's get into the theories. My first theory is maybe it was an accident. You know what I'm saying? I know that Australia is known for having a hidden shame of domestic violence. I'm not saying that domestic violence is an accident. Please don't come for me. But what I'm saying is maybe there was a bit of a, you know, she just found out that they owe 6 figures to the ATO, and the ATO are, actually, you know, I honestly think that Centrelink is more brutal with people than the ATO, but either way, 6 figures to anyone. It's a lot, sis, and I can imagine that I would be upset, especially because my husband has been lying to me about his successful computer company. I've been doing the right thing. I've been paying my taxes. So I'd be emotional. I'd be upset. Maybe there was a upset shove from Wendy over to Gary. And then maybe he was like, maybe he shoved her. We all know from our hidden shame, it's not even hidden, it's just a shame of king punches, what is that, king hits or coward punches, where people also fall. We know how easy it is for people to fall and fatally hit their head. Could this have, I mean, I know technically it's not an accident, but technically like it is. I'm just saying, maybe an accident happened where someone fell after a little shove or something like that and they hit their head in the wrong place. Gary's like, well, shit, she's dead. And maybe he freaked out. Did he go on his morning walk and have to figure out what to do? And then when he came back from his morning walk, he then drove the car to Holland Park, knowing that that's where she would have parked if she was going to catch the bus to the city. Whether or not it was, like, it could or couldn't be like domestic violence, you know, maybe it was just a thing that had happened that night when tensions were high. But this would explain why Wendy's whole entire family have come out in support of Gary, being like, he would never. Because what does an accident mean? It means that it was unexpected. It means that this is not usual behavior from this person. So that would explain why they would be like, no, this isn't something that he would do, because it was an unexpected accident. And also, this could explain why his demeanor all of a sudden changed after she went missing. Because it was an accident, because it was unexpected. Even an accidental murder, because realistically, if you push someone and they hit their head and they die, you've murdered them. And the guilt that would give someone, it just like, of course they're gonna have mental health problems afterwards. So that could be a reason why he's gone a little bit kooky. I don't know what the neurological condition is. I'm just seeing a little bit of depression there. Obviously, you would have to be depressed to commit suicide. The next theory is an angry stalker. If you are a woman in 2019 even, and you say anything about women's rights, you know, abortion, anything like that, you are gonna have some really heated, angry people yelling at you through the internet. Can you imagine what that was like back then? I know that it's only like, what, a couple decades ago, but that is a lot of time. And even considering that in 2019, you still get angry people who take things way too far, it is a lot worse back then. Can you imagine? So if we consider that she was getting all these anonymous calls to her office, maybe the morning that she disappeared and he left to go on his walk, maybe someone was watching. Maybe someone was angry about her being so outspoken. It was a really heated time for her. She was prominent and she was on TV talking about like things that we don't talk about. So maybe someone was following her, or maybe someone recognized her when she parked at Holland Park. And then maybe it was just easy from there. Maybe they just took her from there. Maybe they didn't take her from the house. Maybe they took her from the park and ride. I don't know if there was footage at the train station or the park and ride or anything like that, but I would be interested to know if they checked that surveillance footage. It seems like something that's so obvious, but I don't know what things were like back then. And I know sometimes police aren't always on the ball because, you know, us in the true crime, what are we? True crime cave, true crime depths of despair. We see cases like this all the time, and 99% of the time, police don't even have the ball to drop. So, I don't know. I want to know what happened with the surveillance footage. Did they have surveillance footage? Was it looked at? I don't know. But then that leads into another thing. Then that leads into, maybe it had nothing to do with her outspokenness. Maybe it had nothing to do with her just finding out that there was 6 figures in debt. Maybe it had nothing to do with domestic violence. Maybe it was just like an opportunistic, I need to stop clicking. Maybe it was just a random attack. Do you know how scary it is to be in a park and ride? Public transport is not safe. especially in Australia. You got people who will stab you for $1, okay? And stab you for a durry. For anyone who doesn't know what a durry is like a cigarette. I don't smoke, so I would probably be stabbed for like not giving a cigarette because I don't have one. Thank God I drive now, but I only recently just got my license. I'm surprised that I have lived to see 25 years old. You know what I'm saying? Am I 25 or 26? I don't know. Not the point, but what I'm saying is maybe when she parked her car at the park and ride, someone just saw the opportunity to take her. Someone saw the opportunity to maybe do something sexually to her, and then they had to kill her. And maybe it wasn't to do with anything happening in her life. Maybe it wasn't anything political. And also keep in mind that the time that this happened, everyone was at work, because she would have probably got to the park and ride at the latest 12 o'clock. Everyone's at work by that time. You know what I'm saying? Like, who's going to be at a train station at 12 o'clock at lunchtime? No one, apart from her and maybe someone who was like, I want her. Because she was blonde, blue-eyed, confident lady. And also she was probably vulnerable because she was probably crying, because we know that she was extremely upset when she left. So she was probably vulnerable and emotional at the time. So that would have been the prime opportunity for someone to take her. Now, my next theory is obviously the theory that I think all of us are thinking of. It's definitely the theory that the police are thinking of, and that is a rage-fueled murder. The day before she goes missing, she opens the letter that says they're 6 figures in debt, $120,000. She's emotional. Maybe she waits for the kids to come home. Maybe she's biting her tongue. Maybe she calls him then and she's like, what the hell is this? What have you done, Gary? What do you mean? You know? We don't know. We don't know. But maybe she waits for the kids to have their dinner, go to bed. Kids are sleeping. It's late at night. She's emotional. She's upset. And he's emotional. He's probably angry. He's embarrassed. He's caught out. He's angry. Maybe it doesn't happen that night. I want to know, I mean, the kids have been very private in that no one knows who the kids are, apart from people close to the case. So it'd be interesting to know what age they were at the time. Did they know anything? Things like that. But maybe it didn't happen that night. Maybe they waited for the kids to go to school. Maybe they had been arguing all night. Maybe they didn't even get any sleep. So they're tired. They've just sent the kids to school. They've come home. They're both obviously not at work that day, because it's 11 o'clock when he claims that she left to go pay the fine and he went to go on a stroll. So maybe she never left to go to the ATO. Maybe out of pure rage, out of pure frustration, things are going around and around. Nothing's coming to a head. Nothing is being resolved. She's not listening. Maybe they're blaming each other. Maybe they're throwing things in there that have nothing to do with the original fight. They're tired. And he snaps. What happens? What happens when you have an angry husband and a wife who is screaming at him? He's been caught out. What is the first thing that you see in movies or in true crime documentaries or in confessions from murderers who have killed their wives? What is the first thing that they do? They usually strangle them so that they'll stop talking, because usually it is the wife yelling at them that triggers them. So what if, to shut her up, it has been so long, he is embarrassed, his manhood has been taken away from him. He's possibly even already mentally unstable. He strangles her to shut her up. And then when he realizes what he's done, does he do anything with the body then? Or is that when he goes on a walk? Maybe he does go on that walk at 11 o'clock like he says that he did. Maybe did he drive to the bushland and take her so that he could go for his morning walk at the hiking trail that I go for my morning walk every morning? There's not a lot of people in there. I usually don't see anyone in there. This is 11 o'clock as well. If I ever go for like a midday walk, you do not see a soul in the Seven Hills Bushland Reserve. So maybe did he take the body with him then? Or maybe he left her body there. Maybe he needed to go on his walk to figure out his next steps. Maybe this was something that just happened. He needed to figure out what he needed to do. And so when he came home, he did what he did with the body. Then he possibly took the silver Toyota Camry and he was like, what do I do? And when he thought of his next steps, he took it to the Holland Park and ride, because that is where he knows that she would have parked so that she could have caught the bus or the train into the city to the ATO. Or maybe it was a premeditated murder. Maybe he knew what he was going to do when she inevitably found out about his debt to the tax office. Maybe he already knew that this is where she parked every day to go into work, to catch the train into the city. No city worker drives into work. Do you know how expensive it is to park in the city? Capitalism. Anyway, maybe he already knew where he was going to take the car, so it looked like she did catch the train into the city. Maybe that is how he knew where the car was when the police rocked up. How interesting is it that when the police find where her car is and they quickly go to where the car is, he is standing there about to get in the car. How did he know that that is where the car was? Is it because he put it there, or is it because he knew that that's where she would have parked? If it is because he knew where she would have parked, wouldn't he have told the police earlier? So it's interesting to me that that is where they find him the second that they find out where it is, trying to get into the car. And it's interesting that he washed it inside and out once he realized that they knew he had the car. Whether or not Gary Darvill is the perfect son-in-law, the perfect husband, the perfect father, who possibly committed Brisbane's perfect crime, or whether or not he had no clue what happened to his wife, I think about that letter that was found right there. I'm sorry for what I've done. What does that mean? Does that mean you're sorry for committing suicide? Because we know that Australia is a Christian, you know, that's, people aren't religious, you know what I'm saying? Especially older generation white people, they're quite religious. And so maybe there's some sort of religious guilt in committing suicide. Maybe there's just emotional guilt. I'm sorry to the people that I love. I'm sorry to my children. You know, I'm sorry for what I've done. It's very specific though. And knowing that you are the prime suspect, because he only did this 3 weeks after the cold case was reopened. So knowing that you're the prime suspect of a murder and writing, I'm sorry for what I've done, I feel like I would have chosen different words knowing that I'm a prime suspect in a murder. I would have been more specific, and it just seems like he is referring to his wife. I honestly, I don't think that I'll be going hiking in that trail anymore. I know that if I do, that I'm constantly going to be on the lookout for anything to do with Wendy, and if I'm not constantly looking for bones or pieces of a body, I'm probably going to be looking for anyone behind me. I'm just going to be scared, you know? So that place is ruined for me now. I am going to be sticking to public streets. And also, if you try and stalk me, as I said, this place is huge, and like, just don't, because I'm scared. I wanted to do this case because I'm like, you know, not a lot of people do true crime cases in Australia, and this is all so recent, and I'm so scared. Please don't stalk me. But again, if you have any information on this case, please call Crime Stoppers. It's anonymous, just FYI. And the number is 1-800-333-000. Remember, there is a $250,000 reward and indemnity. It's a doozy. Let me know what you think happened. What's your theory? I reckon I'm pretty spot on with my theories, but if you've got any sort of theory, if maybe my theory isn't quite adding up, maybe I've missed something, let me know in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up because it does make a difference. Yeah, people out here giving me thumbs downs all the time. And on my on the Jones Children case, I got a thumbs down. I like that case. I bought, where is it? It's probably in the wash, but I bought a Woody cup because the day after I posted my Jones Children, like my 3-part series on their murder, I was so emotional about that. And you know, that was Natan's favorite character. So I saw it in Coles and it was a Woody themed cup, and I was just like, a little tear went down my face, and I was like, this is a sign, this is Natan. And so I bought it, and so now I have that. And so now every time I see Woody, I'm gonna think of Natan. So I don't know why I've just started talking about this, but anyway, if you like my true crime series, I do this every Sunday, and I post a new video on Wednesdays as well. I don't have a theme for my Wednesdays. Sometimes I do Does It Work? Sometimes I do makeup stuff. Sometimes I do story times or challenges. And yeah, so basically subscribe to my channel. I'll put my head here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.